Amazing. And thank you for being here. If you want to put in the chat where you are logging in from, I know it's morning time for us on the West Coast. For some of us on the East Coast, it's already middle of the day. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join. Let me share my screen. And you can definitely remain off camera and just use the chat window when you want to. I will answer the questions at the end as well. Okay, we have a pretty good group of people here. Lovely to see your faces if you want to be on camera. If you do not, that's totally fine. As I mentioned, this is going to be recorded and transcribed, so it will be shared in the school community. I'm very excited to be talking about this because this is kind of like NLP next level, and it's all the fun things that I genuinely care about and I've been studying and all of that. And I want for all of us just to kind of have a sense of curiosity and play so that as we move through today's presentation and any questions that you have at the end, that there is that sense of curiosity. So when I was doing the training that I went through, they would always say, like, leave everything that you know at the door, show up as a blank slate. I would say that probably Buddhism says the same thing. And then from there, you know, take what you like and then leave the rest. So I'm going to ask really quickly if everybody can just mute. And then that way we won't get any feedback. I might still be having some people joining in. So if I pause to let them in, then I will do that. All right, so you can all see my screen, yeah? Okay, awesome. Okay, everything that I'm talking about, everything that I do with all of the clients who I work with is helping you be who you want to be, do what you want to do, and have what you want to have. We have so many stories of why things are hard, that change work has to be hard, that achieving the goals that we want is hard. And also, just as we start to step into that power, into that new kind of element and that new identity, we are potentially met with new challenges. And a lot of what I'm experiencing right now with my 11-year-old daughter is just kind of watching her as she moves through feeling the struggle of what society and like culture and the collective, that energy and that momentum versus what she knows. And it's not always easy to step into this identity because it's very different. Like everything that I'm talking about with this quantum stuff is so wild and weird because that's not what we learned growing up. And so my hope is that we rally around each other. And that's what the school community is for, so that we can really start stepping into this new wave of what the world needs now. Now, I used to be a yoga teacher, so I was very, very much in the woo-woo world. I know a lot of people who are very woo. That is not necessarily me. I have elements of that, but I think that the area and the zone of genius that I have is helping to bridge the gap between what we thought we knew and then what else is possible. And I invite you to ask questions at the end. Okay, so everything that we learned in school was very limited. I happen to weirdly date a lot of educators, so my friends think it's really funny. They're like, oh, another teacher. So some of the things that I discovered along the way, because the educators who I've spoken with are all about alternative forms of education. So Montessori, Waldorf, Alpha School, all of these things. They are all showing that, hey, the education system, the educational system we went through was all about the three-dimensional world. It was all about falling in line and staying, you know, that's why education was created for the large part, was for the working class to be able to, you know, homogenize everyone. And so the world isn't, that's not where we're going. You can see it with AI and everything, that we need to start developing better thinkers, better learners. So the Alpha School creator, they're actually launching one here in La Jolla, and my friends are looking to send their kids there. It's amazing because they're blending all of the best parts of education, outdoor learning, you know, personal hero's journey kind of work with, let me leverage AI and start using it to what I need to learn, the way that my brain works. So this is one of the things that she said during the talk that I heard for her. She came to our entrepreneurial group, is what we need now today is to build better learners, people who can be asking better questions, because we don't know what the tools and the resources are going to be, but we know that if we can build that resiliency within ourselves, we will be able to navigate that path. So everything that I'm doing today as well is to help you be a better learner, to help you think correctly, like not what we learn in school of how the brain works, and then how to leverage what science continues to validate as what spirituality has known all along. Science is now just proving what people for thousands of years have known, and they just didn't have the science. So I was reading a book by Louise Hay when I was living in Taiwan, and I was going through a divorce at the time. So I really wanted to help my mindset get into the right place. And one of the things that she said is, these are the things that we should have learned in school. We should have learned how to have better boundaries, how to show up as a human being, how to manage our finances, how to take care of our bodies, all of these things. Those are not necessarily the things that we learned. So my whole thing is, you were never taught the real rules. RR is very hard for me to say. That name Rory, I'm like, oh, it's so hard. So you were never taught the real rules. And what we learn in school is a three-dimensional world. There's gravity, I'm standing here, the things that I want are over there. But quantum physics continues to show a different story. Actually, time is not linear. You can collapse timelines. You can make things happen so much faster than you ever believed. And this is where we get to play with the magic of the serendipity and synchronicity of the universe. And there's a reason that as you start to align your inner world, your outer world is going to show you more of these infinite possibilities. It's because it wants you to pay attention. It wants your brain to light up and say, oh, I can update the code. I can be moving through the world in a different way. So what if you could collapse timelines? What if the goal that you want over there is not as far as you think that it is? What if you could start making more magic happen in your life? So when I used to teach yoga, I think that students used to love coming to my class because I was like pushing the door open to what was possible. The amount of serendipity and synchronicity that would happen in my life was so wild that I was like, that can't just be coincidence. That can't possibly. But I wasn't all the way saying like I could see auras and colors. And so people felt like, okay, that's the edge of belief. I can start leaning into that. And so I'd love for you to just be able to start playing with the world. I mean, I'm raising my hand as someone who needs to play more. I did not learn how to play as a child of tiger parents. That was seen as a waste of time. And then one day I was running along in Del Mar. You know, it's so beautiful there. And as I was running, I saw this dolphin leap out of the water and do a complete flip and then land back into the water. And as I saw it, it totally stopped me in my tracks because it made me realize, oh my God, creatures in nature know how to play. They want to play just for the pure joy of being. And I got all emotional about it because it was like, oh, I felt like the universe was sending me a sign, like it's time for you to stop like hustling and start enjoying that life. So before we go any further, I want to just take a moment to arrive here. Now, I always say, like, maybe take in the deepest breath you've breathed in all day and just fully arrive. We are often moving so quickly. There's a book that I've been reading called Into the Magic Shop. And when they talk about magic, the woman who is teaching the author was saying, do you know why magic works? It's because nobody's actually present. Nobody's really here. They're in their own minds. They're like, you know, racing around. So how do we get more present? And it's in this generous present moment that we can enact change. So I always say, if you can, arrive here now. So you are a statistical miracle. There are 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. It is 13.8 billion years old. And that means that for you to be here, this little dot right here, and there had to be 100% survival rate of every single one of your ancestors to arrive here now. So sometimes when I start to get like spinny in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember I am right here. And look at all of this. And this is just like a portion of space. So remembering that you are a statistical miracle. There is this article in The Atlantic called The Ordinary Miracle of Existing. And it's saying that we take for granted the things that, you know, we do every day because they seem ordinary, but they're actually miraculous. And we've just become like, you know, non-observant. We're not observing it anymore. One of the things that I like to say is indoor plumbing to like, you know, royalty, like in the 1800s was like, what the heck? So like we get to experience these things all of the time that were once such luxuries and such miracles. So I want you to remember that you are a miracle. And truly in your genetic makeup, you are made of the elements that is what the universe, what happened during the Big Bang. All of those like elements are in your body. So you are made of star stuff. Inside you right now, you have neural firing patterns that exceed the number of atoms in the known universe, just your body alone. You have more synaptic connections than there are stars in the Milky Way. You have enough atomic energy that is the equivalent of several atomic bombs. So you are not small, you are extraordinary. And every day you're playing in the field of infinite possibilities, but we often forget that. We think that what we see and what we're experiencing right now is the only real thing. So my hope is that you will be reminded today of how miraculous and magical you truly are, and then stepping into that more and more. But every day we're asking questions that revolve around this. Am I enough? Everything that we do is because we're seeking more safety, more value, and more power. We want to feel 100% safe, 100% valuable, 100% powerful. So what we are, like that constant chatter that we might not even notice anymore, the quiet simmer is, am I enough? And the answer is 100% yes, you are. That is not the question. The question is, where did the conditioning happen to allow you to forget that you are enough and you're more than enough? Again, you're a miracle. So maybe you've done all the right things, you've checked off all the boxes, or you've learned about affirmations and you've tried them and you're like, well, this doesn't seem to be really working the way that I thought that it was going to. And so there are reasons for that. When you're doing affirmations, it's not because you're trying to do the wrong thing. It's not understanding at which point your brain is actually paying attention to the information that you're trying to give it. So I'm going to show you throughout this how you can notice when that is, how you can basically hack your unconscious mind, and how then you can leverage the quantum field to keep showing you evidence of your new reality. So affirmations and a lot of the exercises that we do, they change the words like the superficial level, but they're not getting down below. So one of the things that we talk about in NLP is you have to address the problem at the root cause. So if the root cause is way down in the unconscious level, but you're trying to address it at the conscious level, there's a mismatch there. That's not going to work. You need to really dig into it and get down there. The good news is digging into it doesn't take that long and it's not that hard. So you are not watching reality. I know some of you are in the Rewire, and I'm really grateful that you're here. And you are not watching reality, you are creating it. And so the science continues to show that the observer changes the outcome. So we often think that the world is very fixed because there's so many systems at play that have so much collective energy. The government is one of those things. When we learned about NLP, there are these different color stratas that they talk about, like organization. So if you're a very blue person, you are the kind of person who loves being in a company. You work very well with structure and order. If you're a very orange person, it's like one layer below that. It's pretty like, you know, it's, you're trying to like assert your power and all of these kinds of things, all the way to the bottom when you're like level red, which is like, dude, I'm just fighting for survival right now. And then you go higher and higher. And so like the higher levels are like a green color, which is, I am now the Dalai Lama. And so now I get to just move around the world in like a higher level of consciousness. This is studied, like it's organizational development, it's collective culture, all of these things. And so there are like systems that we have all been born into culturally, societally, all of that kind of stuff. It's easy to forget that we have ownership and power in those structures when it feels like one person battling all of these things. It could be in your own internal family system as well, or even in your brain. It can feel like, dude, I'm just fighting myself all of the time. And so there are all of these things that feel like the momentum is working against you. However, when you change your internal state, it really does change everything, which the good news is, just like your breath, you have the ability to impact and control like the length of your inhalation, the length of your exhalation, yet it's also autonomic. It's going to run whether you think about it or not. Similarly, your emotional state is going to be there whether you want to play with it or not, and you get to influence the state. So it's kind of that beautiful balance that traditional Chinese medicine talks about of how you have free will and a destiny. You will never be able to be forced to live out your destiny, but you're sure going to be able, the universe is going to tell you and remind you that you have one, and you will always have a choice. So one of the things that I love thinking about is the placebo effect. And we've all heard this, like someone's given a sugar pill and then they have just the same results. In fact, the science that they did was they gave people not just a sugar pill, but they gave it something to actively prevent your brain from being able to help you relieve the pain. So it was working against the person. And yet, because they believe they got the pill that helped to relieve and alleviate pain, it bypassed that. It superseded that. So why does the placebo effect work? Well, the belief makes a real chemical response in your body. Your beliefs are that strong, and I'm getting chills as I say it now, that it can actually impact your physical body. That's why the placebo effect works. So a belief is consciousness, it's your thought patterns, it's all of that. And so we can utilize this understanding to our advantage rather than working against us. The wild other thing that I like to think about and explore is that science has been able to see how you can see, hear, think, and sleep, all of these things, but it cannot explain consciousness. Like science has not been able to figure out what consciousness is, that there is a you somewhere noticing all of these things. How science is so advanced, how can it not figure out what consciousness is? And it can't. It has not been able to replicate consciousness yet. So I think that that's fascinating, because then if you look at quantum physics, it's the understanding that that consciousness is where you want to play. That's where you're going to have the most leverage, the most impact on your external environment, is this unknown thing that science hasn't been able to map. So all of these things that you're seeing here are scientifically proven. That this is all with like Joe Dispenza. He talks a lot about this, and there are people who like or don't like Joe Dispenza, but he has these books called Becoming Supernatural, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So everything that he's done with his like week-long retreats, he's had scientists come in and study them. It's kind of like also the way that Wim Hof, scientists came and studied him because he would do those ice baths, and he said he could control your autonomic nervous system. Well, prior to that, scientists were like, no, you can't. Like, it's so deeply ingrained, you can't control that. And he's like, yes, I can. And he showed them scientifically that he could bypass and hack autonomic systems through the power of his breath, through the power of his brain. Like, so all of this just kind of shows you that there's way more that we can access. And so one of the things that I like to think about is that science has shown that your heart has this electromagnetic field that extends way beyond the body. And so if you study yoga and whatnot, they show like these auras around your physical self. You have a spiritual body, an emotional body, a mental body, a physical body. So all of this is demonstrating that you can't see that, but your unconscious mind is picking up on it. You're picking up on someone else's vibe and their energy, just like they're picking up on yours. All of these things we can't see on a regular basis, and yet we are actively impacting it on a regular basis. So why don't we leverage that and utilize that to our advantage? How do we become more deliberate in what we want to transform? So in 2022, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for demonstrating that entangled particles behave as one system regardless of the distance. Again, they did science. There's like two particles touch, they're going to separate it. They're going to hold one here and they're going to throw one out into space. And measurable, if they were able to measure it, like the instant that they activated this particle, the other one instantly changed. So that was one of the things that happened in physics. And then also this idea of quantum tunneling. So we've all experienced probably a sunburn or getting too much sun. But science has shown like the protons that you feel on your skin scientifically should not be able to reach you. Like the protons are going through barriers that physics is saying that can actually be possible. So the fact that these things are happening right now means that, again, there are miracles happening all the time, and we just take them for everyday, like, cause. So I want you to start thinking about this as a way to just open up of what else do I not know that I thought that I knew? And it can be very like disarming at times. And if you can ride the waves like a bumpy boat on an ocean, you will get to calmer waters. So here's the edge of what we know right now. We know the observer effect, that if there is something that's observing this, the wave of atoms happening, it changes the way that the particles show up. We know that your mind can operate at many different levels, including the quantum level. So if you think about it, I was just listening to a podcast today of this thing about, like, they were trying to create this predictive bureau. So people who had very intuitive abilities and could predict that things were about to happen before they happened. I mean, throughout time, there's always been that. There's always been people who can see things like, where is that coming from? Why is it happening? They've shown that intention produces measurable physiological effects. Again, think about the placebo effect. They've shown that epigenetics, what we've inherited and what we can impact, that our gene expression does change. It's not just whatever we were born with, that's what we've got. So ultimately, the boundary between mind and matter is way thinner than we thought. And so again, we are more powerful and more extraordinary than we might believe. So when I talked about the quantum leap, my daughter, I used to love that show, like way back when I watched it when I was young, and then they did a remake of the show, and then my daughter was like, what's happening? How do they do that? So it's a really fun show to think about. And what I'm talking about is, like, oftentimes, like, the leaps that we can make internally, they truly are, again, I hear on a weekly basis, this is so life-changing. I can't articulate how or why. I wish I could give you the words, which as a marketer, I'm like, I really wish you could give me the words too. So I could share about it. But all of these things are happening in such profound ways, and they seem very subtle and they're very substantial. So I'm going to share with you how you can shift yourself as the observer to then impact your external world. So physics has found, again, that observing something changes what it does. Brain science, neuroscience has found, oh, here's what happens in your brain whenever you revisit a memory, and here's the opportunity that you have to change the memory, because it's going to impact your physiology and it's going to impact your lived experience. So the next book that I'm writing is called It's Never Too Late to Have a Happy Childhood, which I said it to one of my clients. He's like, I would buy that book in a heartbeat because it's true. How we've organized the memories in our brain impacts how we are now. So if we shift the way that we perceive the memory, it's going to shift everything moving forward. This is something, if you've been with me with NLP, is going to sound really familiar. And there's a reason, because this is what's changing the observer internally so that your external world is going to shift. Something happened a long time ago and it created a belief. So there was a decision that you made when this external thing happened, and you made a decision about how safe you were, about how valuable you were, about how powerful you were. That decision became the limiting belief. I can't do this. I'm not enough. I've got to prove myself. That then runs throughout the rest of your life. You organize everything that happens in your brain by what psychology calls a gestalt, which means that the different emotional experiences and the different memories that you have, they don't live independently of one another. Anytime that your brain says, that's familiar to me, I'm going to group it over here. So it basically, if you think about a Christmas lights, it's going to put another bulb in the chain. What I do with clients is I help you unplug the electrical, like the socket from the outlet, because then you can dismantle all the rest of those memories. You don't need it anymore, because all you needed, the only reason that they keep showing up for you is because there's a lesson that hasn't been processed. If you can process the lesson, you as an observer literally won't notice it anymore. So one of the things that I like to say is, like, okay, say you're not triggered by, random people saying like things to you that make no sense. So for example, if a stranger came up to you and said, like, you look like a purple elephant with polka dots, you would probably look at that person and be like, are you okay? Like, this has nothing to do with me. I don't, irrelevant. But if that person came up to you and said, you know what, I think that you really aren't good at this. Like, you can't do this. Why did you ever decide that you could do this? And it was something that really mattered to you. If you had an open wound there, it's like that person is pressing on the wound. So everything that's happening in our lives, like, we notice them and we're paying attention to them because somehow they match a belief system that we have. And it's why you could have everybody standing in a room and you've probably heard that when people witness an accident, there are so many different accounts of the thing that happened because everybody is seeing it through their own lens, through however they've deleted the other information or focused on this bit of information. And so it's never actually the whole picture. And that's what we do every single time. That's why emotions still have charge. So all of the memories and experiences that you have are organized in a chain. Then there's a pattern that starts to repeat because you haven't addressed and resolved the first time that it happened. So then it's going to keep propagating for you as an opportunity for you to heal it and resolve it. Everything that's happening is for you, not against you. And when my daughter gets into a very heightened state, she's like, no, it's happening to me. And I was like, nope, it's happening for you. And you're also choosing what you're focusing on. She doesn't want to hear it in that moment. Her brain is in a primal state. She's not hearing it in that moment. However, I keep reiterating it to her and she's actually told me, stop saying that. So, but there's a pattern that's happening. And so until we address like the core blueprint at which this pattern was formed, it's going to keep building on it because it has a blueprint to build from. But once we remove the blueprint, it won't build from that anymore. So anytime that you shift your brain's perception of the picture in your mind, because that's how a memory is encoded, it's encoded by what you see, what you hear, what you feel. The closer it is to you, the more impactful it feels. The farther away, the less impactful it feels. If I help your brain shift, like do a whole 360 and walk around that image, see it from above and below, see it like with like the giant expanse of, think about the universe that we were just talking about and spaciousness and time. All of that shifts the position of the memory in your brain and the meaning that you have given it, which then changes the memory. And that's when we can release it and we can release the emotional charge associated with it, because the stronger the emotion, the deeper the hold. And the reason that there's a strong emotional hook and emotional hold is because your brain is asking you, pay attention. Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. There's something here to learn. There's something here for you to utilize moving forward. The stronger the emotion, the more that we pay attention. Just think about like when you fall in love with someone, you're obviously going to pay attention to the person you fall in love with more than a random stranger on the street. What they say is going to have more impact because there's a reason. The emotions connect and encode it even more deeply. And so there's an opportunity in these moments to create a new encoding, which then changes the trajectory of your life moving forward. You're going to give it new meaning. You're going to see it differently. And if you can remember the memory without the charge, that is wisdom. If I can be totally neutral about what happened and just remember, oh, well, this is what came out of it. This is how I'm going to leverage it moving forward. That's going to change everything. I always like to remind people, we are here in this point because of our lived experiences. All of our former identity created the reality that we have now. We only are here with the wisdom that we have because of our lived experiences. However, if you take this information and you're like, okay, I look back, I learn all of these things. Now I'm going to look forward and see how I can leverage all of that wisdom moving forward in my life. That is how we move to the next level. That's how we move into a new identity. If we take everything that we learn and we look back and we say, damn it, I should have known better. I should have done this differently, all of that kind of stuff. That's where guilt and shame comes from. It's just the direction at which you are looking. You could not have gleaned this information where you're standing right now without going through all of those things. But because you're taking the wisdom that you have now and looking backwards, that's where guilt and shame comes from. You could not have known it along the way until you got here now. So the next time that you're feeling guilt and shame, you can ask yourself, wait a minute, which direction am I looking in? Am I looking towards the past or am I looking towards the future? If you look towards the future, that's how you can leverage it as a learning and useful information for what to do in the future or what not to do. I also like to say that, I'm totally going to curse. When I moved into Kauai, a lot of people have heard of this. When I moved onto Kauai, that it's a small island, so small. So small. And I could recognize people by the cars that they were driving. Like I'd see them driving on the opposite side of the road because there's only a one lane, like going each way. So a girl that I met when I first moved there was trying to warn me, just so you know, it's a very small island. So don't future fuck yourself. Like don't do things now that are going to screw you up later. And so I think about that a lot. It's like, what I'm doing now, is this going to screw me over later? Am I going to regret it later? That kind of thing. So there's like a future timeline that I take clients through so that you can start getting familiar with your future self now. So you can glean that wisdom from your future self who has already lived through all of these experiences and be able to tell you, hey, maybe you should do this thing that makes you uncomfortable because it will help you get to where I am, or maybe don't think about that. Like maybe move on from this experience. So the ceiling that you're currently experiencing in any aspect of your life, personal health, growth, career, whatever it is, finances, it doesn't just float there by itself. Think of any ceiling. The ceiling is only held up because there are walls to hold it up. So everything that we're doing is continuing to hold up that ceiling. And I'm going to show you how to make that ceiling your new floor. It's going to be a simple technique. When I say simple, it does not mean that it's easy. A lot of the clients that I work with, when they are like, well, I think I need another technique, or I think I need this, I was like, actually, let's just check in. How often are you using the techniques that you already know? Oh, so you already have the tools, you already have the resources. It's just a matter of those micro moments, what you're choosing to do with that information. Your brain is not reacting to what's happening right now. There's this wild, and you can go Google this, like science. So they do these randomized tests with people where they have images pop up on the screen. And then the person who's like the test subject is like trying to, predict or indicate like what the image is. And in the MRI scans, they actually show that the person knows what's about to show up on the screen before it shows up on the screen. How is that possible? So that means that, again, we're connected to some sort of super consciousness, some sort of quantum field. So whatever it is that you're doing is not passive. Your brain has a reticular activating system. It will delete, distort, and generalize information that does not align with your beliefs. The way to change that is to shift what you believe. What is a belief? It is just a thought you keep thinking. That is all a belief is. So you can install new beliefs at any time. When the belief changes, the world feels different. It is truly like, let's say you won the lottery. So the moment before you won the lottery is going to feel one way. And the second that you win the lottery, your entire belief system and everything that you feel is going to feel differently immediately. Has anything else externally shifted other than the fact that you got the news that you have all of this money? Okay, so that's like the physical thing that's changed. Everything else, not so much. It's just your filter. And you always have control over the filter, just like your breath. You always have control over how deep you inhale, how deep you exhale, and it's going to run autonomically. So if you held your breath for a really long time, it would at some point make you breathe because that's its job. So anytime that you have a belief that gets activated, so anytime you pull up a memory from storage, anytime you are thinking a belief, that moment, there's a window there. It's editable. Every single time you recall something, it's not a Polaroid picture, it's a video. You get to edit it. And there's a span of time, like about an hour, every time you recall it. If in that hour you introduce a new belief, a new way of being, a new shift in your pattern, that will change everything. So most people don't realize that like it feels, again, like I'm just thinking about the same thought that I've had forever, but every time you bring it up, that's an opportunity to literally edit. So, Control Alt Delete, like whatever it is, you can edit it in that moment. So the next time a belief gets activated, I want you to introduce a mismatch. I want you to do something that makes it so that belief cannot fully be applied the way that it's running now. That's when the window is open. And if you can create that mismatch, you're going to have a felt sense of it because your physiology is your unconscious mind. Think about like when you take a deep breath and you exhale it out, it literally changes your physiological state. You can feel the shift. And so this is how to create a mismatch. The mismatch is if you say like, I feel like I'm not enough, when you say something that like your brain doesn't fully believe, that's where affirmations kind of get tricky. The first thing to just start notice is, what does it feel like in my body? So probably you haven't even noticed that the beliefs are running. So even just feeling it in your body is going to be the first time that you create a mismatch. Because the feelings that we have, like the discomfort, whenever we have these limiting beliefs, it's because your soul knows that that's not true. You as a soul are like a perfect entity. Again, I mentioned in the Rewire, Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me. If you want to hear about like what she's experienced in her near-death experience and what we are as souls and why what we're doing here as humans, that's a really good book to do it. But a lot of times we're living in our brains and we're not in our bodies. So the moment that we can start dropping into our body, that's going to start shifting something. Then I want you to think of something that doesn't fit that belief. Any little thing. If you feel like I'm not enough, there has to be a moment in your life where you've done something you're proud of, even if it's small, even if it's just saying no that one time to somebody, even if it's like getting up, putting on your running shoes and going to run when you didn't want to go run. Something that shows you that can't be true. So then you're introducing more of that mismatch and that wobble effect. I want you to start getting out of your headspace, trying to figure it out, because that's the most limited part of your brain. That's your conscious brain. It's the most limited part. I want you to get into the most expansive part of your brain, which is the unconscious mind. So literally, if you just took a step back and you started trying to expand your visual field to take in as much of the edge of the room as you can, imagining that you're looking at the horizon and seeing as far out as you can, that's going to start accessing your unconscious mind. That is where you are going to be able to create more mismatch, because the conscious mind is just the most limited part. It's the parts that's deleting, distorting, and generalizing everything. It wants to keep you safe based on what you know. Well, what you know got you here, and it's not going to get you over to where you want to be. So your unconscious mind can serve up more information to you when you allow for it to take the driver's seat. And then just notice the wobble. Notice like the disconnect. That is going to start creating more of those moments where you can step into who you are now. And let's be honest, if you're on this call right now, I bet you are way more capable than you're giving yourself credit for. I bet you deep down inside, you know that. You know that you're way more powerful than you've acknowledged outwardly or even inwardly. Because I know I've done that. When I like really take a step back and I move into the unconscious, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I like doubting myself? What am I doing? I know what's true. And you can feel what's true. We used to say, like, when I was teaching yoga, that you could feel what's true by like the tingshas, like those little Tibetan symbols. When you go cling, like there's a very clear sound. And it's like, that's what truth feels like. You know when something is true for you. So I want you to, as much as possible, create a mismatch. Sometimes the mismatch is physiological, literally standing up, jumping up and down. As my former cranial sacral healer would say, he's a Scottish guy with his like, he's like, dude, the things that I've seen, his mom was like very connected to, like, she could predict anybody who was pregnant in the village, what gender their baby was going to be and all that kind of stuff. He's like, if you need a new perspective, literally lie on your back and look up at the ceiling. Doing something like that, that simple moment is going to change everything. So the reason why the change can feel instant is you're no longer fighting it. You are no longer battling against yourself. The thing, I just did this a couple of days ago, and then my friend, who is also an NLP coach, just said that she did the same thing. She started feeling anxiety rising. And the more that I fought it, the more that it was getting stronger. So at some point I was like, wait a minute, why am I fighting this? I'm just going to lean into it and I'm just going to let it be. The moment that I leaned into it, I was like so at peace and just able to go to sleep. And she literally said the same thing. She's like, I was feeling this anxiety, and then I decided to stop fighting it and I just started leaning into it, and I totally felt at peace. And it's the fighting and the friction that is causing the challenge. So if we can surrender and just literally, like, imagine you just let it go. Like if you just went like this, you know, it would release all of the charge. And so it's a different way. Like, instead of fighting it, how can I work with my brain? How can I see that, oh, their belief is going again? Instead of beating myself up that I'm having the belief, what is the mismatch that I can introduce now? That is no longer fighting it. That's just saying, all right, you're showing up. Let's dance. Let's figure this out. So it's efforting less is what I want you to do. Because as you effort less, You get to welcome in everything that's been trying to get to you in the quantum field. You shifting yourself as an observer, you embracing that feeling now. You allow that to come in. So one of the things that we used to say when I was like teaching a lot is, how many prayers have you asked for? How many wishes have you made? How many asks have you made to the universe? But the second that you ask, you're like, I'm on to the next thing. I'm going to run and do more. And, so you have all of these blessings that are just kind of floating around trying to catch up with you as you keep moving forward in your life. So we used to say that, like, this is why mindfulness and meditation is so important, that you made the ask, and then mindfulness and meditation allows you to receive the answer. It allows you to be still enough for all of those blessings to catch up with you, for all of those learnings to meet with you. So do less, like really do less. One of the things that I recently said too is that if you go like James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, everything that he talks about is all you need to do is 1% improvement every day. If you look at a pilot and you're looking at the trajectory at which they're flying, if they go 1 degree off course, if they just like maintain the trajectory and it was 1 degree off going like this, they're going to end up in a totally different country. That is what happens when you compound this 1% action, this 1 degree shift. I'm saying this because I know that we all want like the big transformation right away. And also think about, like, if you were offered everything that you wanted right now, could you have the capacity to hold it? Do you need to build a better container to be able to hold everything? So the 1% action every day, every moment of every day is where you're going to experience the most magic. It's not the sexiest thing for me to tell you, but it is going to be the thing that makes the most difference. And that is where I see the people getting the best results, is they're coming back to it again and again and again and just catching themselves in those moments. So as you shift the internal world, the external world starts to meet you differently. You start to see unexpected opportunities. You start to see synchronicities. You feel different in different spaces. Why is that? If the thing that you're working towards, like if it just presented as everyday ho-hum, you're taking the same route, going to the same places, again, you're not going to pay attention. You've become unconscious to it. It's like a default mode. But when serendipity shows up and unexpected things show up, that's when your brain says, wait, pay attention. This was unexpected. And so it's validating that the work is working when you start experiencing those shifts. Everything that I'm sharing, it gets amplified when you are in a group. That's why we're here doing this. So that our collective energy transforms. Like, whether we are aware of it or not, we are connected. And so if you're here in this room, there's a reason for it. So your brain has mirror neurons when you see someone else do it. That's why modeling is so important, that you get to see that person could do it. Okay, well, now then maybe I can do it too. The understanding that when other people are present, you kind of like leverage that group. And when other people witness you, I used to work as a writer for Herbalife. I didn't know it was like an affiliate marketing company at the time when I joined. I was like, what is happening right now? But they had a huge like corporate presence. I interviewed the CEO, and the CEO at the time, I think he's still married to her. She's a film producer. So she produced like this movie with J-Lo, something about dancing. I can't remember. Anyways, he gave her this line in it, which was, a partnership is truly just being able to witness someone else. It's the witnessing that is like what matters. And at the time, I was like in my mid-20s, and I was like, that sounds like the most boring relationship in the world. What are you talking about? But then I realized, oh, that is what it is. When you have a friend who witnesses you, witnesses your triumphs or your challenges, it makes all the difference in the world. And then also like Dispenza's whole thing. The reason that I think a lot of us are craving that collective experience is because we miss it, because it's not just the connection. There's something that happens when people are grouping together that changes the dynamic. So it's the container in the group. So if you don't have a group right now of people. The school community, I'm attracting like all of the people who want to be there to be able to make these shifts. It's not easy when you're going against like upstream for whatever, but everything else. So find your community, even if it's one person, two people together makes so much more of an impact than just one person. And you got to have a check and balance and somebody reflecting back something to you. If you want to do this more, you can scan this QR code. So some of you are in the Rewire. This is like next level. This is like moving into the quantum. It's me bringing in my friend Michelle, and she's all about the energetic healing and the quantum. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and sign up. You're the first to know about it. I'm going to start marketing it out, and it's going to be really fun because we get to play with more of what like the quantum is. And then lastly, any Q&A. So, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And yeah, this stuff is so fun. And I love seeing like different, responses. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Go ahead and come off mute, or you can type it in the chat. And thank you for being a little bit patient. We went a little over.
Thank you so much for everything. And thank you for saying this is happening for you. That was so helpful today.
Yeah.
Today, everything was like upside down for me. But yeah, one thing I'm noticing when you said that is I'm setting limits. So everything is, of course, all revolved. So thank you. Thank you for everything. This is great.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah, thank you. And thank you, Nee. That's the biggest thing that I think was such a change for me. It's like why I started my book that way is like everything is working out for you, even if you can't tell in the moment. That is probably one of the hardest things to come away with is that learning, but it's such a level of maturity and spiritual maturity too, to know that, to not like have a knee-jerk reaction and to be more patient. Like last night, my daughter was just going to town because she could not sleep, and she's like working herself up into like a frantic state for an hour at like 11 o'clock at night, like, yelling at me, like all of these things. And I was just like, okay, somehow this is working out for us. I don't know how right now, but it is. And I even said it to her. I was like, babe, the challenges are where you're going to learn more about yourself. I know you can't hear me right now when I say this, but it is. So this is working for you. And she's like, oh. But yeah. So yes, I'm glad that resonated. Amazing. Does anybody else have any other questions? I will repost this in the school community too. Awesome. Okay. Oh, yes. Is that a thumbs up because you had a question, Nee?
No, I was going to ask if it was going to be reposted, and you said it's going to be in the school community, so I'm excited.
Yeah, and I'll include the deck because I know that there's different kinds of learners out there. So some of us are visual, some of us are auditory, some of us want to like experience it. So I will definitely post that and share that, and then you can utilize that.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day today. And I look forward to staying in touch. You guys are all awesome. So have a beautiful day. Bye.